What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be showing you how to change or replace your spur gear in the hpi E10 drift. Now this can be if you broke something in it, if it's making a clicking noise, or if you just want an upgrade or different spur gear or pinion. The things you will need if you want to do this is a screwdriver about this size, or if you have a bunch of room, find one that fits perfectly. I'll show you later on. And then a bunch of little Allen wrenches in case one of them doesn't fit, so that way you don't strip out any screws. Now if you're worried about any mesh settings being wrong, don't worry, I'll help you out. Alright, let's get right into it. So your first step is to take off the body, set it aside, and you will see a little mount right here. On that mount, there is one screw right here on the top, and then there's a nut right there. To unscrew that one, there is a screw right here. You want to go ahead and get a Phillips head screwdriver that fits that, and go ahead and start unscrewing it. Now after you've done that, pull this thing off, and keep in mind that this longer side goes right there, and that the longer screw out of the two, the longer one is the one that goes up on the bottom, so set that next to that side and set this one next to that side. You want to do this to all of your parts so you don't mess up where any of the screws go. Now after removing that mount, what you want to do is unscrew this screw right here and this one right here. That will take this off and then take this off, that way you can take the whole motor out. After you've taken those screws off, you want to pull up on this little cover, set it aside, keeping the screws where you took them off at, and then you want to pop this up a little bit. Now you can go ahead and pull up the whole motor out of its place. Now if you don't see it just yet, if you turn this gear a little bit, you will see a little hex screw right there. And what you want to do with that is go ahead and get an Allen wrench that fits that perfectly, where there's almost no play in it. A little bit of play is fine, but you don't want too much or else it'll strip out the screw, and these are a pain to remove after they are stripped. And now after you find an Allen wrench that fits snug in that screw, you want to go ahead, put it in there, get it as snug as can be, and you want to go ahead and start turning. Now this will be very hard to turn, so don't be worried about breaking anything if your Allen wrench is snug with the screw. Now after you're done unscrewing this, you want to go ahead and take this grub screw out and put it in your new pinion gear if it did not come with one. If it did, then go ahead and use the one it came with, and then you're going to want to go ahead, put this on the shaft of your motor on that flat spot, and repeat the process, just tightening it instead of loosening it. And just a note, you want to make sure to put this motor in the mount and make sure that when you put your pinion in, it lines up perfectly with the spur gear. Now after you get all that screwed on, what you want to go ahead and do is get this little mount for the motor or for the pinion or whatever. You want to go ahead and snap it on right there, because you will be turning this thing upside down, and what that does, it just keeps the motor from falling out as you work on it. And on that note, let's start working on the spur gear. Now what you're going to want to do is, after you put this little thing on to keep the motor from falling out, you're going to turn this car over and lean it on its tires, or if you want to set it against something so it doesn't fall over. That's because you will be unscrewing these 5 screws right here to take off this half, so that it disconnects the drive shaft from this half of the spur gear. Now after you do that, you want to keep all these 5 screws in a place where you know where they came from. Again, make sure not to lose them, and then all you gotta do is go ahead and pull, and then you take off this whole half of the car. Well, not half, but the back end of the car. After you take off the back end, what you're going to want to do is disconnect the steering to remove the front end. To do that, you want to take off this screw right here, and then these 2 screws that I'm putting my finger on right there. That way you can pull the whole front end off, not have to worry about this still being connected. And you want to keep in mind the screw size difference. This little screw was for this connection right here, where that goes, and then these 2 longer ones were for the main one. So make sure to remember that, so you put them back in the right spot. And now, just like the rear, what you're going to want to do is unscrew these 5 screws. That way you can pull off the whole front end, which will then free up this spur gear. And you can try all you want right now to take it out. It's not going to come out, so that's why we have to take off this front end. I know it's a lot, guys, just bear with me here. Now after you unscrew those 5 screws, go ahead and put them in a spot where you won't lose them. And then you're going to want to go ahead and pull away the whole front end, just like that. Now you have the whole chassis just by itself. Now after finishing taking all this stuff off, you are now finally able to take out this beautiful spur gear. Now you have the spur gear, but one problem is that these bearings are still on there. Then what you want to do is go ahead and get a flathead screwdriver, and you just want to pry around it very gently on both sides all the way around to not scratch it or anything. That way you get them both off, you get your new spur gear, and you put them both back on, and you're ready for action. Now you get your spur gear, go ahead and slide it in the slot, and making sure the longer side is facing the front of the car. Now what we're going to want to do is start putting the car back together, so you get your whole front end right here. Then we will actually work on the steering before we actually connect it to the chassis. This is so when we are screwing this back on, it won't keep falling away from the car. So this just makes it easier. Now you're going to get the 2 longer screws out the bunch, and for each one you're going to put them in this slot right here, and then you want to screw them both in that hole. You can screw them in fully, and then we will get to putting this side on the chassis. What you can also do right now is get the shorter screw. You want to put it in the top like this, let it fall in there, and then you will go ahead and screw it onto that little thing right there. So this is when it can get a little tricky. What you're going to want to do is hold the chassis and then hold the front end like this, and then you're going to wiggle this in there, and you'll see it slide in. But if it doesn't, then all you do is spin the spur gear a little bit until it finds that happy place, and it will slide in just like that. Then what you're going to want to do, spin this around, hold both ends just like this, and try to screw in this first screw right here. And if you do that and everything is still lined up perfectly, you will go ahead and finish off the 4 screws that you haven't screwed in yet. Now after you finish putting in all 5 of these screws, and sometimes you have to push this down in order for these to fit in, but you will get it. Everything should work just fine. You should be able to turn this back and forth, and it should move it all the way down where the servo is. And then you want to move your motor away a little bit, and then if you spin this spur gear, it should rotate just like that, and that means you have done everything just right. So now after you have finished the front end of the car, you will go ahead and get the back end, slide the shaft underneath that wire, make sure it sets in there, and then go ahead and mess around with the shaft until it slides right into the spur gear where it can turn it just like that. And now you're going to want to hold the shaft in place, make sure it's still in the spur gear. And then I can't show you because I'm holding the camera, but you're going to want to hold the rear end too and lift the car up like this. And then you want to screw in that first screw, make sure that shaft is still in there, and then finish off with the last 4 screws. Now after screwing in all the screws, making sure they're all as tight as can be, you want to make sure that when you spin your spur gear, all tires spin in the same direction. Now if you have done that, you are on the right path and you are almost done. Now what I like to do to all of my RC cars is go ahead and grease the spur and pinion. And if you don't want to, you don't have to do this, but I like to use some white lithium grease and dab some on there. I will show you how much to put on. So what I do is I put a little dab of it just like that, rotate it a little bit, put another little dab, rotate it, put another little dab, and then you just do that, run it back and forth like this, and it will work itself out as you do this and drive it. So the reason why you don't want to put too much grease on these gears is because they spin so fast that all the grease will just fling off, which means you just wasted grease on the gears. So just putting it on the surface of each tooth is just enough. If you want to check out where to get this lithium grease, I use it on all of my RC cars. It worked great. A link will be in the description where you can pick it up. Now to put these gear covers back on, you're going to want to get this little plastic piece first, and you want to try to snap it into the little slot, and you'll feel it push in just like that. Now after getting this little plastic piece on, you're going to get your other piece, put it on there, and then you want to push on this smaller one until you hear it snap. That means that they are now connected, and then you can go ahead and screw these 2 screws back in. Now after you screw this piece on, you're going to get your motor mount, put this longer side just like that, and then get your longer screw right here, and you want to screw it in right there, and then with your shorter screw, you want to screw it in right there. Now don't screw them in fully yet, and I will tell you why. Now after you screw that in without fully tightening the screws, there will be a set of numbers from 35 to 20 in the little notch that you can move around, and that's why you didn't want to tighten these, because you set that notch to how many teeth your pinion has. If your car is stock, you will put that notch in between 25 and 20, but if you did upgrade your pinion gear, it should tell you how many gears it has in the package, and then you can set it to how many right there. Now after you do that, you want to go ahead and fully tighten this top screw and that bottom screw. Now after you do that, make sure that notch is still in the same spot, and make sure when you move the car back and forth, that motor spins and that you don't hear any slipping. If you do hear slipping, it'll just make a really loud clicking noise. Now after putting the car all back together, making sure you don't have any screws left behind, which you shouldn't, you can go ahead, put the body on it, and you're ready to drive it. If you have any questions about anything in this video, about putting the car back together, doing something in the car, if the car had a problem for you, make sure to let me know down in the comments below, and I will try my best to figure it out for you. Alright guys, this will be the end of the video today. I hope you were able to replace your pinion and spur gear successfully, and I will be putting a link to the stock pinion and spur gear down in the description below, and also that lithium grease. Alright, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you in my next video. Stay awesome. Peace.